Okay, everyone, make sure you have your paper and pencil out ready to take notes for one-step inequalities. One-step inequalities, multiplying and dividing. Right? Last time we did adding and subtracting. This time we're going to do multiplying and dividing. So let's review here our less than and greater than. Okay, let's remember that. Right, with our left hand we say less than, right? So less than, and we shade to the left. Left hand is less, right? When we have less than or equal to, when we have our arrow and we have our equal sign, it's less than or equal to. Right? This is a closed circle, and we shade to the left. This one is open circle, and we shade to the left as well. Right? Left hand means less. Left hand means we shade left. Okay? On this one, we use our right hand to do the arrow, right? And this arrow means greater than, right? Greater than. That means that we do open circle and we shade to the right. Right? So we shade right. Right? This one means greater than or equal to. So greater than or equal to. This one is a closed circle, and we still shade to the right. Right? We use our right hand to shade to the right. Right? Right hand means right. Okay? Now, down here, one more rule, because we're dividing and multiplying. Dividing and multiplying by a negative, okay, flips the signs. So whenever we multiply or divide by a negative number, the arrows, the scissors are going to flip, right? The scissors are going to flip, but we'll see that when we get to it, okay? So let's see our examples here. So I'm going to write it here over here to give me some room. So 1,392 is greater than negative 48x. Okay, I'm going to draw my line of separation. Now, I'm not quite going to draw my arrow yet, and you'll see why. Okay, so I am 1,392. Okay, so what's happening here between negative 48 and x is negative 48 times x. So what is the opposite of multiplying? Well, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So if I'm multiplying by negative 48 here, when I bring it over, I'm going to divide by negative 48. So let's cross out negative 48 and let's divide. And let's divide by negative 48. Okay? Now, look what happens here. My x comes down, right? My x comes down. But look what I'm dividing by. I'm dividing by a negative. You see this negative here? I'm dividing by a negative. When I divide by a negative, this arrow is going to flip. So I'm going to write it like that. So a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And 1,392 divided by 48 with a calculator is 29. But there's a problem here, right? And you guys can tell me. The problem here is that I need to mirror this because x right now is on the right. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to mirror, right? And when I mirror, I'm going to get x, and I'm going to flip the arrow again, -29. So this is my answer. This is my final solution. So which hand do I use to make these arrows here, these scissors, right? I use my right hand, right? I use my right hand, so I'm going to shade to the right. So I know I'm going to shade to the right. Where do I put my circle, though? And it's going to be an open circle because, look, it doesn't have an equal sign on -29. So where is -29 here? Well, I don't see it. I see -28. I see -30. Well, -29 is right in between -28 and -30. So this is where my open circle goes. And I shade to the right. And there you go. So I flipped my arrow 2 times. I flipped it twice. I flipped it once here because I divided by a negative. But then I flipped it again because I had to mirror, right? So don't worry. I know it seems confusing, but we'll get used to it with some practice. Okay? So that's our first example. All right. Let's try our second example here. It says solve each inequality. So let me copy it over here. So I have space. Okay, -50. Okay, I'm going to draw my line of separation. I'm not going to draw my arrow yet because I'm not sure whether I have to flip it or not. So here I'm dividing by 22. And what is the opposite of dividing by 22? Exactly, multiplying. So if I'm dividing by 22 here, when I move 22 over, I'm going to multiply by 22. Right? So I'm going to cross out 22 and I'm going to multiply by 22. So my x comes down. So I know I'm going to have x. Now, did I multiply by a negative here? Did I multiply by a negative? Is this 22 negative here? No. So that means that this arrow is not going to flip. This arrow is going to stay just like that. Okay? A negative times a positive. I know what you're thinking. Wait, mister, but there's a negative here. That's okay. As long as this 22 was not negative. See? I didn't move a -22 over. I'm not multiplying by a -22. So this does not flip. It stays just like that one. Okay? So a negative times a positive is a negative. 50 times 22 is 1,100. Now, I don't need to mirror because x is already on the left. So this is my solution. So I need to graph, right? And which hand do I use to make this arrow? My right hand, right? Right. So I know I'm going to graph right. So I'm going to graph to the right. Okay. I know I have a greater than or equal to. So I know it's going to be a closed circle on -1,100. So closed circle on -1,100. And I know I'm shading to the, graphing to the right. And there you go. there's the second example, right? So those are our notes filled out. So let's do a couple more examples that you're going to see in the worksheet. So let's see what this says. It says, solve each inequality, graph its solution, and describe how you graphed it. Okay, that's good. So let's start here. So I'm going to rewrite. 35 is greater than a divided by 45. Okay, I'm going to draw my line of separation. I'm not going to draw my arrow quite yet because I want to make sure that I'm not multiplying by a negative or dividing by a negative. So if I'm dividing here, when 45 goes over, it's going to multiply, right? So I'm going to cross out 45 and I'm going to multiply on this side by 45, right? So I know my A comes down, right? My A comes down. I did not multiply by a negative 45. So that means that this arrow is going to stay the same as the one up top here. So this arrow is the same as this arrow, right? And then I'll use my calculator to multiply 45 times 35, and I get 1575, right? But I have a problem here, right? I want A to be on the left. So I need to use a mirror. So I'm going to use a mirror, and I'm going to say A, and I'm going to flip my arrow. Flip it. I flipped it. 1575. Okay? So what hand do I use to make these scissors here? This arrow. I use my left hand, right? That means I'm going to shade left. So on my graph, I'm going to shade left. And I know I'm going to put a open circle because I don't have an equal sign on 1575. So let's find 1575. Well, I have 1574 and I have 1576. That means that 1575 is in the middle right here. So I know it's going to be an open circle, right? Let me double check. Yeah, I don't have an equal sign here. I don't have it. And I know I'm shading to the right, so I'm going to the left, excuse me. Shade to the left. And there we go. Look at that. That's one of the examples. All right. Now one more example. Perfect. Let's try example number 2 here. You're going to see in your, first of all, wait a minute. I forgot. Describe how you graphed. Well, I'm going to put here, I graphed left because the arrow is less than. There you go. It's a good description, right? I graph left because the arrow is less than. All right. Let's move on to the next problem here, right? So let me write my inequality down again here to give me some room. I'm going to draw my line of separation. I'm not going to draw my arrow yet because I'm not sure whether I have to flip it. So let's remember that negative 9n means negative 9 times n, right? So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide by -9 right here. So my n is going to come down. So my n comes down. Now, look, I'm dividing by a negative, right? So that means that this guy is going to flip. So I'm going to draw this guy flipped, just like that. And then I'm going to say a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And using my calculator, 423 divided by 9 is equal to 47. And there's no need to mirror because n is already on the left. So this is my solution. N is less than -47. So now let's graph. Well, I know I use my left hand to make these scissors here, right? My left hand. So I know I'm going to graph left. So I know I'm going to go left. Okay. I know it's going to be open circle because I don't have an equal sign. An open circle on -47. So let's find -47 here. Well, I have -46 and I have -48. So that means that -47 is right here in the middle. So I know it's an open circle and I'm graphing to the left. And there we go. Look at that. That's the second example. So these are the kind of problems you're going to see in your workshop. Ah, look at this. Again, look at me. I forgot to describe how you graphed. So let's see, how would I write that? I would say I graphed left because I used my left hand to make the arrow. Right? That's a pretty good description. So, there we go. These are two examples of the work you're gonna get, and these are the notes for the one-step inequalities, multiplying and dividing.